What happens when Hollywood's most decorated actress sits down with Britain's most beloved talk show host for what should be a delightful celebration of cinema, only for the conversation to explode into accusations about political activism, acting integrity, and the entertainment industry's moral responsibility? In just 21 seconds, laughter turned to shock as one of the most respected figures in film history was asked to leave in front of a stunned live audience. Before we dive into this absolutely unprecedented moment, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations the industry doesn't want you to see, and the explosive moments that reveal what really happens when cameras capture unscripted truth. Last night on The Graham Norton Show, what was supposed to be a charming appearance promoting Meryl Streep's latest project turned into one of the most uncomfortable and shocking confrontations British television has ever witnessed. The legendary actress, known throughout her career for her grace, eloquence, and carefully measured public persona, found herself in an increasingly hostile exchange with host Graham Norton that left the other guests frozen in their seats, afraid to move or speak, and the studio audience gasping in disbelief at what they were witnessing unfold in real time. What started as a seemingly innocent question about Streep's political statements and activism, about her public speeches and social media presence, quickly spiraled into a bitter and deeply personal argument about the role of celebrities in political discourse, the value of artistic expression versus political activism, and whether actors should use their considerable platforms to influence public opinion on issues beyond entertainment. The confrontation escalated so rapidly and became so heated that within minutes, both host and guest were standing and raising their voices, with the normally unflappable Graham Norton visibly shaken and ultimately asking Streep to leave his show. Meryl Streep arrived at the studio that evening in her typical understated elegance, wearing a sophisticated dark outfit that reflected her refined taste and professional demeanor, greeting Graham with the warmth and genuine professionalism she'd shown countless times on talk shows throughout her legendary career, spanning more than 4 decades. She took her seat on the famous red couch alongside the other guests scheduled for that evening, all of whom seemed genuinely honored and somewhat intimidated to share the sofa with someone of her incredible stature and accomplishment in the film industry. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted nearly 30 seconds, wave after wave of applause washing over the studio, clearly thrilled and moved to be in the presence of someone who had given them so many unforgettable performances over the decades, from Sophie's Choice to The Devil Wears Prada to countless other iconic roles. Graham, ever the consummate host with his quick wit, infectious laugh, and genuine affection for his guests that had made his show one of the most beloved on British television, welcomed her with his characteristic enthusiasm and warmth, immediately beginning to ask about her new film, the fascinating characters she'd played throughout her career, and the remarkable arc of her work that had spanned generations and touched so many lives around the world. The conversation flowed beautifully at first, with Streep sharing thoughtful and articulate insights about her craft, funny and self-deprecating anecdotes from various film sets over the years, and warm stories about working with different directors and co-stars throughout her long and distinguished career. She talked about the immense challenges of embodying different characters convincingly, about the extensive research she undertook for roles, whether playing Margaret Thatcher or Julia Child, about the emotional preparation and vulnerability required to access certain performances and make them feel authentic. She made the audience laugh with self-deprecating humor about her famous accents, and the running jokes about her record-breaking number of Academy Award nominations, joking that she should just set up a permanent seat at the ceremony. Graham asked probing but friendly questions about her process, about how she chose roles at this late stage of her remarkable career, about what still excited and challenged her about acting after so many years and so many iconic performances. The other guests on the couch contributed occasionally, clearly enjoying being part of a conversation with someone they obviously admired deeply. One guest, a younger actor, even admitted they'd been nervous all day, knowing they'd be sharing the couch with Meryl Streep. The energy was warm, celebratory, filled with laughter and genuine appreciation, exactly what everyone had come to expect from the Graham Norton show's signature blend of humor, warmth, and genuine conversation that had made it such a beloved institution. But then Graham, perhaps trying to address what he saw as an unavoidable topic, given Streep's recent public statements and her reputation for political outspokenness, asked a question that would prove to be the catalyst for everything that followed. He leaned forward with his characteristic, gentle smile, his hands folded in his lap, and said with what seemed like genuine curiosity, "Meryl, I have to ask, because you've been quite vocal recently about political issues, about speaking out publicly against certain politicians and policies, making statements at award ceremonies. You gave that powerful and emotional speech at the Golden Globes a few years ago that got enormous attention worldwide and sparked so much conversation. As someone with such a massive platform and incredible influence, someone whose words carry so much weight, do you ever worry about alienating audiences who might disagree with your political views? Do you think there's a risk that speaking out politically might overshadow your artistic work, or make it harder for people to lose themselves in your performances when they're thinking about your political statements?" Instead, the question hung in the air for just a moment, the audience suddenly quieter, sensing perhaps that the tone had shifted slightly. Streep's expression, which had been open and relaxed and filled with warmth just seconds before, shifted to something noticeably more guarded and serious. Her smile faded, and she seemed to be carefully considering not just her answer, but the intent behind the question. She took a deliberate breath before responding, clearly choosing her words with the same care she brought to her performances. "Well, Graham, I think we're living in times where silence feels like complicity, where not speaking up feels like endorsing injustice. When you see attacks on democratic values, on vulnerable communities, on truth itself, I don't think you can just stay quiet because you're worried about your career, or your popularity, or your box office numbers. Artists have always had a responsibility to speak truth, to reflect the world around them honestly, to use whatever platform they have for something beyond just entertaining people for 2 hours. So no, I don't worry about alienating people who disagree with me politically, because I think some things are more important than universal approval or staying comfortable." Graham nodded slowly, but there was something in his expression that suggested he wanted to push the conversation further, to dig deeper into territory that was perhaps uncomfortable. The audience could feel the shift in energy, the warmth beginning to cool. "But don't you think there's something a bit, privileged about celebrities telling ordinary people how to think about politics? I mean this in the kindest way possible, but you live in a completely different world from most of your audience, don't you? You have enormous wealth, complete security, access to resources and opportunities that they don't have. You can afford to take political stands because you're insulated from most consequences. When you speak out about political issues from that position of incredible privilege, doesn't it sometimes come across as out of touch or preachy to people who are actually struggling with these issues in their daily lives?" The other guests on the couch shifted uncomfortably, exchanging quick glances. This wasn't the usual light-hearted banter that characterized Graham's show at all. One guest looked at the floor, another at their hands. Streep's jaw tightened visibly, and when she spoke, there was an unmistakable edge to her voice that hadn't been there before, a hardness that cut through the previously warm atmosphere. "I'm sorry, are you suggesting that having success means I should keep my mouth shut about injustice? That wealth somehow disqualifies me from caring about other people or speaking out against wrongdoing? That's a rather odd position for someone in your position to take, Graham. You have a considerable platform, too. You use it every single week to reach millions of people. You make good money doing it. Should you not express opinions about anything because you're successful and wealthy?" Should we all just stay silent unless we're poor and powerless? Graham's smile became noticeably more strained, less genuine, more of a professional mask. I'm not saying you should keep quiet, Meryl. Please don't put words in my mouth. I'm just asking whether you've actually considered that when celebrities get very vocal about politics, it can sometimes do more harm than good. It can make issues more divisive. Instead of bringing people together, it can make people tune out completely. It can reduce complex policy debates to celebrity feuds and meaningless sound bites. Look at what happened in America. With certain celebrities who were very vocal about politics in recent elections, did it actually help the causes they claimed to care about? Or did it just entrench divisions and make things worse? Streep leaned forward, her voice rising noticeably, her composure beginning to crack in a way that was shocking to see from someone usually so controlled. So your solution is for people with platforms to say nothing? To just smile and entertain and pretend everything is fine while democracy is being systematically eroded? While vulnerable people are being targeted? While truth itself is under attack? That's cowardice, Graham. That's abdication of responsibility. And I'm frankly surprised and disappointed to hear you suggesting it, especially given your own position and influence. The audience was getting noticeably quieter with each exchange. The usual laughter and warm energy of the show completely replaced by palpable tension and growing discomfort. People were looking at each other, nervously, unsure how to react or whether this was somehow scripted. Graham's expression hardened visibly, his jaw setting. I'm not suggesting cowardice, Meryl, and I resent the implication. I'm suggesting humility. I'm suggesting that maybe, just maybe, actors aren't political experts and shouldn't be treated as such just because they're famous and have access to microphones. You're absolutely brilliant at your job. No one in the world disputes that. But being a great actress, even the greatest actress of your generation, doesn't automatically make you a great political analyst or activist. Those are different skill sets. And being a talk show host doesn't make you qualified to lecture me about when I should and shouldn't speak about issues I care deeply about. Streep shot back immediately, her voice sharp and cutting. You invited me here ostensibly to talk about my film, to celebrate my work, and instead, you're using this as an opportunity to question my right to have political opinions, to suggest I should stay in my lane. That's incredibly disrespectful, Graham. Not just to me, but to every artist who's ever tried to use their voice for something meaningful. Graham's tone became noticeably firmer, less conciliatory, the friendly host persona falling away. I invited you here for a conversation, Meryl. And conversations, real conversations, sometimes include challenging questions. You've been very willing to challenge politicians publicly, to call them out in speeches and on social media, to use your platform to attack people you disagree with. Surely you can handle some gentle pushback yourself? Or is criticism only acceptable when you're the one doing it? Gentle pushback? Streep's voice rose noticeably. You're questioning my integrity and my right to speak. You're suggesting I should shut up and act. That's not gentle pushback, Graham. That's an attack disguised as a question. The other guests looked like they desperately wanted to disappear. One was staring at their hands, another at the floor, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. The studio audience was dead silent, collectively holding their breath. Graham pressed on, seeming to sense he'd touched a nerve. But here's what bothers me, and I think it bothers a lot of people. You and other actors will speak very passionately about political causes. You'll attend protests and give speeches and post on social media. But at the end of the day, none of it really affects you personally, does it? You go back to your mansion, your comfortable life, your next multi-million-dollar film role. Meanwhile, the ordinary people you claim to speak for are dealing with the actual consequences of these issues. Isn't there something a bit hollow about that? Streep stood up abruptly, the sudden movement making everyone in the studio jump slightly. Her face was flushed with genuine anger, her hands trembling at her sides. That is completely out of line, Graham. You have no idea what I do privately, what causes I support financially, what work I do behind the scenes that isn't publicized or announced. You're making sweeping assumptions based on stereotypes about wealthy actors. And you're doing it on your show, with cameras rolling, knowing full well that I'm here as your invited guest. This isn't gentle pushback. This is ambush journalism pretending to be conversation. This is you using your platform to attack someone under the guise of asking difficult questions. Graham remained seated, but his voice was firm. It's not an ambush to ask difficult questions, Meryl. It's not an attack to suggest that celebrity political activism might not always be as effective or genuine as it claims to be. These are legitimate concerns that many people have. No, these are tired talking points used to silence anyone with a platform who dares to speak about injustice, Streep said, her voice shaking with anger. It's the same old argument. If you're successful, you're not allowed to care about anyone else. If you speak out, you're being preachy or out of touch. If you stay silent, you're complicit. There's no winning, is there? Unless you just smile and dance and entertain and never challenge anyone or anything. That's not what I'm saying at all, Graham protested. But Streep wasn't finished. You know what I think this is really about, Graham? Streep said, her voice shaking with emotion. I think you're jealous. I think you resent that actors have platforms to discuss serious, important issues, while talk show hosts are expected to keep things light and fun and superficial. I think you're taking out your own frustrations about your role in the entertainment ecosystem, about being seen as just entertainment. By attacking me and questioning my motives, the audience gasped audibly, a collective intake of breath that filled the studio. Several people covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged wide-eyed glances with their neighbors. This had crossed a major line, moved from professional disagreement into personal attack territory, and everyone knew it. Graham's face went noticeably red, his hands clenching at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice was cold and tight, with barely controlled anger. That is completely uncalled for, Meryl. Completely uncalled for. I've hosted this show for years. I've treated thousands of guests with respect and warmth and genuine interest. I asked you a legitimate question about celebrity political activism, about something you've chosen to make very public, and you've turned it into a personal attack on me. That's incredibly unfair. And beneath you, unfair? Streep let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the silent studio. You've spent the last 10 minutes systematically questioning my integrity, my motivations, my right to have political opinions, suggesting I'm out of touch and privileged and ineffective, and now you're upset because I suggested you might have your own. Issues driving this line of questioning? That's rich. That's absolutely rich. You can dish it out, but you can't take it. I think we should move on to another topic, Graham said, clearly trying to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation. Let's talk about your film, which is actually why you're here tonight. Oh, now you want to talk about my film? Streep's voice dripped with heavy sarcasm, her eyes blazing. After spending all this time making me out to be some kind of out-of-touch celebrity who should keep her mouth shut and just entertain people? No, Graham. I don't think I want to talk about my film anymore. Not here. Not with someone who clearly has such contempt for me and what I stand for. I don't have contempt for you, Graham said, standing up as well now. I have immense respect for your work, but that doesn't mean I can't ask questions about your political statements. You didn't ask questions. You made accusations, Streep countered. There's a difference, and you know it. You're a smart man, Graham. You know exactly what you were doing. You were trying to make me look bad, to score points, to create a viral moment. Well, congratulations. You got it. The other guests had now physically moved to the far end of the couch, creating as much distance as possible from the confrontation unfolding before them. One had their arms wrapped around themselves defensively. The studio crew was clearly getting frantic signals from producers in the control room, unsure whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling and capture this unprecedented moment. You're being incredibly unfair, Graham said, his voice rising to match hers, his professional composure completely shattered. I've given you a platform to promote your work, provided you with an audience of millions, and you're using it to attack me personally because I dared to ask you challenging questions about your very public political statements. If you can't handle being questioned about things you've chosen to say publicly, maybe you shouldn't make those statements in the first place. There it is, Streep said, pointing at him with a trembling finger. There's the real Graham Norton, the one who thinks he gets to police what people say and do, the one who hides behind jokes and charm and that carefully constructed persona, but is actually quite judgmental and small-minded underneath it all. I've heard rumors about you over the years, about your attitude toward guests who don't play along perfectly with your format, who won't just be good little performers, but I never believed them until this very moment. Graham's face was now deep red. You need to leave my show, right now. If you're going to stand there and insult me after I gave you this platform, you need to leave. Oh, I'm leaving, Streep said, already reaching for her bag. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't stay on this couch another second if you paid me, which, ironically, you did. But I'll be donating my appearance fee to charity, because I don't want a penny of your money. That's very noble of you, Graham said with heavy sarcasm. Very on brand. Make sure you announce it publicly, so everyone knows how principled you are. Streep turned to face him fully, her eyes blazing. You know what your problem is, Graham? You've gotten so comfortable in your role as the safe, non-threatening entertainment host that you've forgotten what it means to actually stand for something. You make jokes, you get celebrities drunk, you create viral moments, and you call it a career. But when someone actually tries to use their platform for something meaningful, you tear them down because it makes you uncomfortable, because it reminds you of your own irrelevance. Get out, Graham said, his voice shaking with anger. Get off my show. Now. I told you I'm already leaving, Streep said. She turned to the other guests. I'm sorry you had to witness this. You all seem like lovely people. Then she looked at the audience. And I'm sorry to you as well. You came here expecting a fun evening, and instead, you got this. She walked toward the exit, her head held high despite the obvious emotion in her voice and the slight tremor in her hands. As she reached the edge of the set, just steps from freedom, Graham called after her with one last attempt to have the final word. You're making a huge mistake, Meryl. Walking out like this, it makes you look petulant and unable to handle criticism. She stopped dead in her tracks and turned back one final time, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made several audience members lean back in their seats. The only mistake I made was coming here in the first place. I thought you were one of the good ones, Graham. Someone who actually cared about substance, about real conversation, about treating guests with genuine respect. But you're just like all the rest of them. You want celebrities to be performing monkeys, there to make your show entertaining and boost your ratings and nothing more. You don't want real people with real thoughts and real convictions. Well, I'm not a performing monkey. I'm a human being with thoughts and opinions and a conscience. And if that makes me unsuitable for your show, then so be it. I'll wear that as a badge of honor. With that, she pushed through the studio doors with force and disappeared into the corridor beyond. The heavy doors swung shut behind her with a dull thud that seemed to reverberate through every corner of the silent studio, echoing like a final punctuation mark on the entire confrontation. Graham stood alone on his stage, visibly shaken, the red couch beside him, now occupied only by 3 shell-shocked guests who clearly had absolutely no idea what to say or do, their faces frozen in expressions of disbelief. The audience remained completely frozen in place, many people with their hands still over their mouths in shock, others looking at each other with wide eyes, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Some looked upset, others angry, others simply stunned. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even seemed to breathe. The cameras kept rolling relentlessly, capturing every excruciating second of the uncomfortable aftermath, every moment of the silence that felt like it might never end. Finally, after what felt like an absolute eternity, Graham turned to face the audience and cameras directly. His face was still visibly flushed, his hands trembling slightly at his sides, his usual composure completely shattered. "Well," he said, his voice strained and unsteady, "that was unexpected. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of the show." But everyone in that studio knew that there was no salvaging this. What was supposed to be a delightful celebration of one of cinema's greatest actresses had exploded into a confrontation about politics, celebrity, and the role of public figures in societal discourse. Meryl Streep had been told to leave the Graham Norton show after an argument that had turned deeply personal, bitter, and absolutely shocking. And as the cameras finally cut away, the full weight of what had just happened was only beginning to sink in for everyone who had witnessed it.